Mr. Hollins, welcome back to the program here. You called for drastic cuts to the city budget. You even suggested getting an emergency task force together with council leaders and Mayor Whitmire. Have you heard back from anybody on whether that's going to happen?
Well, Jason, first of all, always great to be here with you. And you're right. I called for one of two things, and this is just basic math, because our budget is out of whack. And so we only have two choices. We either need more revenue or we're going to have to make significant cuts, which are going to be inconvenient and which are going to affect critical services. You're right. I called for an emergency task force that includes my office, the mayor's office, and members of city council on the Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee. So far, I haven't heard back on whether that's going to happen, but it's critical because we find ourselves really in the face of an emergency here.
$320 million, I think, is the hole you guys have now. What kind of reaction have you had from council on how they think that they can close that hole, or even the mayor's office?
Uh, we haven't heard directly from the mayor's office, so we know as much as you know in terms of what's been said in the public sphere. Conversations that I've had offline with council members, they express serious concern, but they're waiting from leadership from the mayor's office here. And frankly, so is the rest of the city. What's happening is, we've been on this track for some time now. And not just my office, but also Houston's ratings agencies have been saying, Houston, we see your costs going up and up and up. We see your debt load increasing, but we're not seeing a plan for how you're going to pay for all of this. And that's what we're waiting for, Jason.
Chris, what kind of cuts could be made on the city budget that would add up to $320 million? What could happen? What's worst case scenario?
You're looking at people, plain and simple. The challenge that we're
Cutting
having
jobs, you mean?
is exactly the challenges that we're having are in our general fund, most of which is our police, our firefighters. And then you look at the rest of city government, a lot of it is debt service, as I mentioned. And so you have a very small pie from which to cut if you don't want to go into public safety, where you're looking at hundreds and potentially thousands of jobs as the only way of solving this, unless you look at the revenue side. And what I've called for is looking at all available options, evaluating them for their financial impact and their impact to city services, and then making the smart decisions and leveling with the people of Houston about what it's going to take to move us forward. And that's what we're waiting to see.
Let's talk about the revenue side for a moment then. Is there something Houston could do to get more money? I see that the mayor wants to take $50 million from Metro, the transit agency there in Houston, take that to fill some of this gap in the budget. But what's the other new revenue besides raising taxes?
There are a number of options that could be explored. You're there in Dallas. In Dallas, you have a garbage fee. That's something that Houston doesn't have. There are some cities like San Antonio that have explored ways of pulling money into the general fund from the water utility. And I'm sure there are other things that I'm not, even thinking of as revenue sources. Going and making sure that insurance claims after disasters or after accidents, that they're paid off in ways that benefit the city. Public-private partnerships that might bring in revenue that we're not thinking about right now. There are no limitation of ideas, but those ideas have to be explored in a real, meaningful way. They have to be vetted, and we have to understand the potential impact of them. And from what I'm seeing, we haven't publicized any of the results of that kind of exploration.
What kind of deadline is the city of Houston working towards on this?
Jason, our next fiscal year begins on July 1st, and we have to pass a budget going into that fiscal year. I cannot personally certify that budget as the chief financial officer of the city if that budget isn't paid for, if it projects that we're going to run out of cash or go below our thresholds for financial accountability and responsibility here in Houston. And so we only have a couple of months to have some of these options come onto the table, for the mayor to make clear what his plans are to close this hole in the budget and put us on a more sustainable path.
Last year, I believe I read there's a $192 million deficit, which you and I discussed. This year, $320 million deficit. Some people watching this might say, well, listen, the federal government runs deficits all the time, huge deficits. Why can't my city government do the same thing?
Yeah, well, first of all, the federal government shouldn't be doing it either.
Right.
But states and cities don't have the ability to do that. By law, our budget has to be paid for. Now, because of federal funds, the city of Houston and many other cities across the state have had a cushion, have had strong fund balances. But what we've done in this past budget and what our status quo is today is that we're spending down that fund balance at an alarming pace, and one that projects that Houston would run out of money next year, which is why this is such an urgent challenge for us.
Bottom line here, no sugarcoating. Chris, should residents of Houston be worried?
There are real concerns, and they put us in office to put solutions on the table and to solve these problems for them. And so now it's up to the city of Houston to do that.
A couple last questions on this money issue here. Mayor Whitmire agreed to pay Houston firefighters $650 million in back pay as part of that settlement. We talked about this last year. Any clarity yet, though, on where that money is going to come from?
No, Jason. So again, I don't want to put the city's financial challenges on any set of workers, right?
Sure.
To get firefighters, police officers, and other city employees to be attracted to doing this job, we got to pay them fairly. And so that is what that is. But we know that we were already operating at a budget north of a budget gap north of $150 million. And the firefighter deal, both the back pay and the raises, added $80 to $90 million to that annually, and that will only go up from here. And what I've been saying from the very beginning is, yes, we have growing costs as a city. I mean, Houston continues to grow. We have major infrastructure needs. We have major needs around quality of life and city services, but we have to articulate how we're going to pay for that. And that's what's been the missing piece.
And you and I have talked about that missing piece the last 3 or 4 interviews we've had here. What do you think the city of Houston just needs to do right now to hit this reset button and get a hold of this?
It's just about making responsible decisions. We have to look at the spreadsheet, right? These numbers don't lie to us, and we have to discover a way without sacrificing critical city services like picking up people's trash and keeping their roads and neighborhoods safe to close this gap. And again, plain and simple, there's only 2 ways to do it. You either find more revenue or you look at ways to be more efficient and cut costs, or some combination of both. And we have to go and do that in an intelligent way. And then we have to communicate that to Houstonians so they know what's going on and what they need to prepare for.
Significant issues you guys face. Always appreciate you making time for us. We appreciate it, Chris.
The pleasure's mine. Talk soon.